How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing really well. And, there's just a lot that has even happened since we saw each other at the event. I feel like we're just coming out of our busy season and like just finally creating some space to reflect back and go, what just happened? So it's been really fun.
I feel like, as you say, there's been a lot that's happened since we last saw each other. So we saw each other a couple of months ago. And what was so funny, I have to just share this with you. We'd never met in real life until we met at your event, where you so graciously invited me to speak. I had such a wonderful time. Thank you. But when we met, it felt like we'd been friends forever. Like at least that's how I felt. Felt like I was just like, oh, like an old friend.
It's
Um,
the same.
yeah, yeah. And I know since then, literally it feels like your life is moving at lightning speed.
It
Since
does.
then, I think because I creep you on social media shamelessly. Shamelessly. I don't even creep. Like is it creeping when like I watch all your things because I love you so much. I think you're so amazing. But since we last met, you've moved into a new home, am I right?
Hmm.
Moved into new home, had a fantastic launch for your program, which we'll talk about. And you just hit a massive milestone for your podcast. Share that with us.
Oh my goodness. We just yesterday hit 1 million downloads, 3.5-ish years after launching the podcast. And what I had shared about that I think is also important to put into context is I had said at an event a few weeks ago to this lovely woman who was so gracious and said, "Oh, I love your podcast." And I said, "Yeah, I'm so excited. We're about to hit 1 million downloads." And she so graciously, I think she actually was saying it as a compliment. So it wasn't said to put me down or make me feel less than about this achievement. But the comment was, "Oh, I would have thought you had already reached that milestone and were far beyond it." And it just, I paused for this moment because inside I kind of went, "Huh," because it's I think this interesting relationship we have with people we watch online. We creep online, right? Because we all have them, where we assume people are just so much further ahead than us, or their success was overnight, or this is just effortless. And the thing that I love most about my business journey, my community growth, is that it has been very consistent. And I wouldn't even put the word slow to it because it's just been at the pace that it's been at. And only I get to say if that's fast or slow. And it's only fast or slow in relation to what our expectation of what it should be is. So, it's been this beautiful journey of me continuing to unlearn the things and part with the habits that are keeping me from the next level. And so it's fun to see this achievement. And my husband, even last night, who I know you are also just a huge fan of because he's a fun person to watch on the internet. But
I'm a member of his fan club for sure. I'm even trying to be president of his fan club.
I mean, I think he received your application for that, and I'll make sure he reviews it because he's just such a great anchor for me to bring me back to the opportunity to acknowledge. And he said, "What's been your favorite part of the entire process of launching this podcast, hitting this milestone?" And I said, "I'll never forget." And this moment actually means more to me than hitting some random number online. I'll never forget the first time I got a message from someone in another country that said, "I love your podcast. You have an admirer in Ghana, Africa." And I was like, how? Little old me, how is this message reaching halfway across the world? And then we actually, I actually established a connection with this beautiful woman and got to know her story and got to know how is the message that we're sharing here impacting the big ideas she's launching in her own community. And that's the piece that I think if we can focus on the impact on the individual person, it's like the numbers are cool that the podcast has been downloaded 1 million times, but the part that I wake up every day on fire to keep working toward is that one person that just needs to hear the message, or the one person who needs to be reminded that they're not meant to do this alone. So it was a very cool milestone. And also with all milestones, you're kind of like, well, that was cool. Okay, what's next? It's like not, I don't get too caught up in the moment of it. I can celebrate it, but then also I don't get too attached to it, if that makes sense.
So I launched right in because I was so excited to celebrate, because it is. And I hear what you're saying, that not getting caught up and giving more meaning to a milestone than, like you said, the milestone that is worthy of celebration is the one person who listened, right? So literally there's one person and who's listened a million times. Like if we think of it as one person that we're touching, that we're impacting, and then the ripple effect. What was the vision when you started this brand? What was it that inspired you, first of all, to start the brand? And what was the vision that propelled you to start the brand?
I love sharing this story because it started really, I say by accident, but I don't believe it was an accident. I believe that there was a bigger knowing that I wasn't quite ready to see. And I was just following like the little breadcrumbs placed right in front of me. So let's take us back 6 or 7 years now, I was building a health and fitness brand. So if we had met, if you were stalking my online content at that point, it would have been a lot of pictures of my avocado toast and my workouts. And, and I loved that. I loved the journey I had been on for the 5 or 6 years before that, just to really step into my power as it related to my own health and fitness. And I was working with a network marketing company, and I was building a business in that sense. And what started to happen was, people, again, this is kind of like tying back to a theme of the assumptions we make when we see someone else's life in the highlight reel online. And I would hear a lot of comments saying, gosh, I'm just so inspired by what you've done, to see you, especially coming from a very small town in the Midwest, especially people from that part of my life would say, gosh, it's just so cool, like to see you really build this and you're really doing something that I can tell is making an impact. I would love to do something like that. And every time that I would press a little bit further and say, well, tell me more about that. Like, what are you inspired by? What ideas are burning in your heart? And they would share these ideas that would almost bring me to tears sometimes. And sometimes it was a concrete idea. Sometimes it was just this gut feeling that I know I'm meant for more. And you could see the fire and the fear in their eyes in that moment. And without skipping a beat, the very next breath would be the reasons why they weren't ready. They felt afraid. They were worried what people were going to think. They felt like a total imposter. And that was the reason why they weren't doing that thing. And every time it made me kind of sit back and go, wait a minute. Did no one tell you the big secret? Oh, no one told you. Okay, let me be the first to tell you. Everyone that you look up to who's doing anything great feels that same way. That's it. That's how you know you're going in the right direction. And so these conversations over the course of several years just kept happening and kept happening. And then one day, in a season of just really intense restlessness, which now I look back and realize I wasn't really challenging myself. I wasn't pushing myself to grow. I was very much operating within the realm of what I could control. And I had someone approach me and say, I'm putting together this program for entrepreneurs who want to write a book. And, I think it could be great to build your health and fitness brand. And I said, well, thank you so much. I'm not going to write a book. And then I said, the next words out of my mouth were sort of like that part where it's almost like a higher self hijacks the conversation. It says, excuse me, one word. I said, but if I did, right? So I opened the door of possibility and I said, I shared the story of these conversations I've been having with women. And I said, I don't think I'd want to talk about health and fitness. I think we need to share more of the real story behind what it looks like to bring a big idea to life, to grow a business, because I think a lot of people are counting themselves out because they think that fear and that self-doubt and whatever is coming up for them is a sign that they should stop. And it's not. And this lovely woman who went on to become a great friend and my book publisher, spoiler alert, said, well, if you don't write that book, who's going to? And I would love to tell you that this is the point where angels started singing and I was like, oh, I'm meant to become this famous author. The first words out of my mouth, I opened my mouth and I started to tell her why I wasn't a writer. I didn't think anyone would listen to me, and they wanted health and fitness content from me. They didn't want this kind of content. And I stopped mid-sentence and I was like, I heard it. I heard the opportunity in that moment that if I wanted to make the impact that I just told her I wanted to make, I had to go first. And so it started with the book. I did end up finishing that book. That's a whole other story of just really overcoming myself day after day. And it ended up inspiring this little event, this tiny little event that I really thought I would have in someone's living room, just to celebrate the launch of the book, which actually did go on to become this annual Powerhouse Women event, which you were just at our 5th live event with over 500 women in the room, hundreds more watching online. And it wasn't something that I could see this far into the vision at that point. I just kept seeing, back to the one person. Well, if I could help that one person, if I could help Jessica, who I talked to yesterday, if I could help, Sarah, who I had a conversation with last week, like maybe this is worth it. And I just kept focusing on that, the next little step that I could see to take. And 5 years later, here we are.
And that little book that you wrote is on Amazon and has phenomenal reviews. Phenomenal reviews. And do you have you ever read the reviews that people write about the book?
As you say that, I'm like, I don't think I've ever gone and looked at the reviews of the book. That's so funny.
You should read them because it's actually like what you're saying about how one person and what people have said about how that book impacted them. And what was your journey, Lindsey? So I love that you knew, right? And you had this realization that people were in their own way, that there was imposter syndrome. I'm gonna guess, maybe I could be wrong, that you didn't come out of the womb. Your mom's amazing, by the way. I met her and absolutely fell in love with her too. Member of her fan club too.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
But I'm guessing you didn't come out of the womb knowing that, this is imposter syndrome. What was your journey to you learning the lessons that you then shared in the book?
That's such a great question, because little did I know that taking on and saying yes to that journey of writing the book was going to have me confront the very things that I wanted to teach. So I was speaking to myself as much as I was speaking to the person I wanted to impact, because I wasn't really prepared for how much the imposter syndrome and the intense fear would show up during the writing process. And so I was helping myself through it and very much in it. So I think that's why the book has a tone of authenticity. And then there's definitely parts, and this is cool to look back on. There's definitely parts where I'm like, that's some regurgitated personal development that I learned, but I hadn't lived yet. Like that's where I was at in the journey, is I was like dipping my toe into what does it look like to show up as 100% of my potential. And I don't know that I ever reach 100%, but like I said, I had come from a season of very carefully controlling how much risk I was willing to take, how much I was willing to attempt things that I didn't know I would be good at. And so this was really the first time that I had ever stepped beyond what I knew myself to be capable of. Because that's the trick is, no, I didn't come out of the womb understanding all these lessons about imposter syndrome and what it takes to break through perfectionism and all those things. But I came out of the womb with just this insatiable ambition and hunger for life that was nurtured as best as it could. But like I said, I grew up in a very small town where I bought into the story at some point that it wasn't safe for me to be fully me. And so it started to create this very controlled, very, let's make sure that before I take this risk, it's definitely going to work out. And so no wonder I was feeling really restless. I was feeling not challenged. I wasn't challenging myself. I wasn't risking failure. And so when I stepped into writing, all of a sudden these moments came up, and it's interesting because this is now what I'm going to write the whole second book about. I had hit these points that now looking back, I can see with such clarity. But in the moment, what was happening was I was experiencing fear. I was coming toe to toe with that monster called imposter syndrome. And it's in those moments that if you watch how your brain responds, like in that moment of you're literally so dangerously close to a breakthrough, it's right on the other side, but you come toe to toe with that fear and you start to go, yeah, you're right. This really isn't like a great season for me. I have so much on my plate. Maybe this is just a distraction. I'm not really feeling this. I don't feel like this is aligned. Sometimes we get very spiritual with the way that we want to, what I call cute quit. We make our quit sound cute in order to not be responsible for what's really underneath it, which was I was scared. I was scared. I was at the point where I was going to have to push through what didn't feel very comfortable. And instead, my mind, if you watch how your mind works in these moments, it starts to build this logical story that is very easy to buy into about why you shouldn't continue down that path of really what's going to grow you. So, I mean, it's a whole journey of what it took to really finish that book. And there were these 3 distinct moments where I remember I showed up to these Zoom calls that we would have with these other authors, and I was going to tell them why this just wasn't the right time for me, right? I was going to give like this very cute answer for why I'm out. I was never going to say I quit. I was going to do it in a cute way that no one could challenge me on. And that's where, when I kept pushing through and I showed up to that call and everything in me was about to say those words. And then someone would say, Lindsey, I need this book. I can't wait for you to finish this book. Keep going, without even knowing that I was about to quit. And if I just kept thinking to myself, I already know what this played out looks like, this version of my life looks like if I quit. Because I'd quit on so many other things. And I just kept saying, well, what if? What's on the other side if I just keep going? What if I just put this little book out? No idea what it's going to turn into. What if I just finish it for me? And that what if, that moment of curiosity on the other side of what felt really like a logical reason to not keep going, was ultimately what changed everything.
You say something very powerful that I love, that cute quit, because our excuses can sound so plausible, so real, so like, absolutely, they make sense. They're very sexy. And yet, as you said, it was about keeping on pushing, knowing that, yes, I feel like an imposter, but keeping on going. And I wonder how much, and this is part of what I love about what you've created with Powerhouse. How much do you think in that moment, as you said, community, being part of a community played into you being able to continue, and how that influenced what you've created with Powerhouse Women?
It was everything. I would not be having this conversation with you today. The Powerhouse Women community would not exist if I hadn't finished that book, and I wouldn't have finished the book if I wasn't surrounded by it. Was actually, and I've come to kind of distinguish, there were 3 types of community that I had as part of this equation. One being these fellow authors. So it was a community of people that I could collaborate with. I could share, where I was at in the journey. They were in kind of like the same season. And so I knew that I wasn't alone. Everyone was going through it, and everyone was feeling the same fear. So that was critical. People that were going to pour belief back into my dream. But there was also, the other type of community is the community that you're mentored by, because I was being led by someone who knew the publishing process and could even say, oh yeah, everyone bumps up against this. This is normal. This fear always comes up, and here's how to work through it. So the person who's a little bit ahead of you, the person who's right alongside you, and then the third one is the community that you impact. So one of those 3, I would think about them. I would think, well, okay, my mentor said this is normal. Here's a pathway through it. The people who are going through this journey with me are also bumping up against fear. So I'm not the only one. And then I would think about the one person, right? The person I could impact, the person who maybe if they heard this story, if they just saw me push through this fear I'm dealing with, maybe it would help them push through theirs. And when I look back and realize the power of those 3, now any big goal that I attempt to achieve, I make sure I'm surrounded by those 3 types of community, because I know to set myself up with a rock solid support system, especially like the bigger the goal, the bigger the resistance I'm likely to feel. And I've got to have a super solid accountability and support network in order to make sure that I don't give up on myself.
Why did you call it Powerhouse Women?
I don't share this story that often, but I had written the entire book and I didn't have a name for it. I wrote an entire 200-page book, no name for it. And I just couldn't quite settle on a name that I resonated with. And one day I was in a spin class, and I don't know what it is about like the endorphins and just like being in a room with other really sweaty people and you're kind of grinding it out to this like intense music. And this word powerhouse, just, I can't even explain it, just kind of like dropped into my spirit. And it, I felt like it was this moment where I was really connected to, this moment where I was connected to my power, to how great it feels when I'm pushing through something really challenging. And I just thought, that's kind of interesting. And then I remember on the drive home, sitting with it, and because I knew I needed to give the publisher a title, I needed to finish this, this project. And I noticed how much I resisted it. There was a lot of feelings of, well, that's, I'm more warm and fuzzy. I don't know if powerhouse is the word I would use to describe myself. And I noticed just how much I thought that I had to be someone else in order to claim that title, to connect to that power. Because that's really what the book was about, is pointing people back to the fact that you don't have to become more, achieve more, learn another damn thing to be a powerhouse. It's actually pointing you to the fact that what you need fundamentally is already within you. If you didn't have what you need in order to bring that idea that you have to life, you wouldn't have that idea. And so I realized like this is the title that first I need to claim, right? And it's more than just the word, it's the whole the world that it creates of, our personal power and connecting with that and constantly cultivating a deeper connection with it. So I will admit, when I first, launched the book, I still was like, I don't know about this title. And what's beautiful is that I think I've also had this evolution, this process of stepping into it, really owning what that means for me, and knowing that, yes, I can still feel very much like the Midwest girl next door who could be your bestie, but she's also going to like really challenge you. And that like my version of being a powerhouse doesn't have to look like anyone else's. So it's probably one of my favorite stories from how the brand evolved, because that was sort of one of the last pieces that came into place. And even I resisted it for a while.
All right. So this powerhouse woman stands on a stage in this neon green jacket with shoulder pads out to here, with this teeny tiny little shorts in these heels in front of a room full of screaming women. What has given you the audacity to become, like, how do you feel you've been able to fully step into the identity of being a powerhouse? What's been your journey to feeling like I am a powerhouse?
That was definitely a moment of a newfound self-expression, what you're describing. And, here's what it really is it's not a destination. It is this ruthless commitment to uncovering what's next for me to give up in terms of habits, beliefs, what doesn't fit the person that I'm becoming next. One of my favorite quotes by Dr. Joe Dispenza is, in order to step into a new future, we must first be willing to confront the parts of us that aren't going there. And so if someone had been able to watch every like step along the way of that girl who published the book to the version that sits in front of you now, who's even different than the version you saw on stage when you and I first got to meet in person, is this very, very intentional process of constantly setting a new vision for myself and tapping into, okay, who's this next version of me that I can feel her energy. And I just try to get as clear about who is that person? How does she feel? How does she operate? And then I don't judge the parts of me that aren't there yet. So I'm in this process right now of just really looking at how much to some extent, I don't fully feel worthy, which is perfect that we're having this conversation on your show, of the biggest version of my life. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't have it, but my work and how I become and how I'm going to step into whatever I'm going to wear on stage next year, and really it's more who I'm going to become, is looking at, okay, am I willing to just sit with myself and go, where did that come from? What does that feel like? And where does it show up in my life? How do I operate? And where do I start to, for me, I think when I'm not connected to just the worthiness to have and receive the life that I desire, it shows up as me cute quitting on myself. Because at some point, I don't believe I'm worthy of it, and I start to talk myself out of it. So it's this process of constantly looking at who you want to become, and then being willing with such grace for yourself and understanding to look at the gap between who you are now and who you want to become, and realize that journey never ends. I hope not. Like I can't wait to just see who I evolve into in my 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. But that is the part that I'm fascinated with, not the external results. It's just a mirror for the internal expansion that's going on. And that's the part that I want to inspire people to be willing to look at for themselves. Because when we fall in love with the journey of who we're becoming, the other stuff just kind of occurs like a cool, like, oh, that's neat. Like, that's cool that happened. But what I'm proudest of is the evolution that's happening within.
So I cannot wait to see the 50, 60, 70-year-old version of you. But in this moment, what is Lindsey's big vision?
So it's interesting because I don't typically see clearly any further than 6 to 12 months out. And I think that's for a reason, because I can tend to get really hyper-focused on how do I make that happen. So I'm in this discovery right now in being able to distinguish what it feels like to do and to achieve, and which is kind of like a controlling energy. And how is that distinct from being able to generate something, meaning embody it, show up as that, make sure my actions are aligned, but surrender the results, right? So it's this interesting process of really learning and unlearning the patterns that, have gotten me to one point in life, but knowing that maybe I don't see that far out, because if I could, it would freak me out right now. And just focusing on, well, who am I becoming next? And what kind of life does she live? What traits does she embody? And that's more so who I'm becoming, my vision for who I'm becoming. I want to become, and I feel this sense that I'm meant to be really abundant. And abundance doesn't even just mean money to me. It's this presence that when I'm in a room, it raises the energy of the room. It makes other people around, it helps them believe that more is possible for them and that they can do it. It's this generosity that just flows from my spirit, generosity in terms of my time, my gifts, my resources, but it doesn't feel like I'm not also honoring my own boundaries. And it feels like this collective we, like and it's actually a picture on my computer background that I'm looking at right now. It's a picture of the event. It's this group of women. And when I look at them and when I connect with you, I'm tuned into the collective gifts that we all have. And while individually those are powerful, what happens when we really bring those together? So I really have just this vision of this this tidal wave of transformation, of changing the way we even look at business and the way we create in this world. That is more of a collective we, realizing that that's actually the secret. That's where I think we create real change in society and in any area that's important to you. It is looking at it from the standpoint of what gifts do I bring to the table? And then which ones do I need in order to make this happen? And who has those? I don't know if that was even an answer to the question, but that's what I can see from this point.
That was a perfect answer to the question, which leads me to ask, so there's the vision, and we all have vision, and you've taken what was an idea from writing a book and built this business, this incredible business that is impacting women, as you said, literally across the globe. How did you go from, okay, I've written a book and then now I've built this community? Like what was it about building a community, first of all, that inspired you to want to do all of because it's not easy, I'm sure it's been a challenging journey. What was it about building the community? Because when I think of Powerhouse Women, having been at the event, that's what stands out most to me is community.
And that's the number one thing that I get asked to speak about. It's the number one thing that when people say they think of Powerhouse Women, that's the first word. And that is such a testament to the magic. And you were in the room. It's something intangible. I actually can't put into words. And I for a long time would say, well, I don't know. We just did it. And it was just recently that I'm sitting down and I'm actually creating like the formula, like, but how did we do it, right? How did this become what it is? Because it's a powerful force, and it gives us the opportunity, the ability to, even when the audience was very small, to make a really big impact, even with a few people. And I think that's what it starts with is, when I was just beginning this journey, I realized really quickly that, yes, I had a bit of an audience from health and fitness, not a big one, but not a lot of those people followed me over into the new journey. And that was perfectly fine. And I just never saw that as something that was going to hold me back. I never saw the size of my audience as the disadvantage. I just knew I would have to think differently. And my heart really just has always looked for connection and collaboration. It's something that even in my corporate career, in everything that I've done, connecting other people has just always been the thing that I naturally did without thinking about it. And so what started to happen was I just realized that it took a lot of pressure off of me if I was creating more value that came from these connections that happened with other people who were in the community. No one was looking at me saying, well, all the value has to come from you, Lindsey. I knew that it was not going to be good for me to put that kind of pressure on myself. So it started just with the simple understanding that if I was really going to live out this message and show that we're not meant to do business or life alone, it couldn't be all coming from me. And so looking for where are the other gifts inside the community? How can we celebrate those and elevate those? How can we create, true connection between the women who are attracted to this energy so that they don't expect that, oh, okay, if they're not, getting to have these one-on-one experiences with me, that they're not seen. They are seen because they're seen by others in the community, because that's the only true way that it can scale. And I do think we're entering a time where community is non-negotiable. If community isn't an intentional part of your business model, whatever kind of business you have a product-based business, you could have a technology company. There's so many different applications to this, but community is the one thing that creates an insurance policy, even when the economy goes bonkers and when Facebook ads aren't converting anymore, and when the algorithm is doing who knows what the algorithm does. When you have the foundation of that true connection between you and your people, and then they feel connected to one another, it becomes, like I was saying earlier, this collective we that it sustains a business. It grows a business even in times where no one else is growing. And it always, back to your question of, then how did we kind of start? It's always given me feedback about what people need next. I've never created or launched something that I didn't already know the community wanted. And that gives me real peace of mind as a business owner. We're creating what they need and want next together, and they feel bought in because they're a part of that process.
I love that thereby, so effectively the community is creating Powerhouse Women, that it is all about the community. Now, even with community, I know that running a business is challenging. What have been maybe some of the most challenging aspects of building a business, and how are you addressing those challenges?
There have been so many. I mean, you think about how most of us start businesses, and not that many people that I've met, at least, came from like a business background, meaning maybe went to school for it, got MBAs and things like that. And even if those that did, because I got a marketing degree, taught me zero about marketing. And I think the biggest challenges along the way have been really learning to look at a business like a business. A lot of us start because we have this passion and we want to give. And at the end of the day, for a business to be sustainable, you have to understand your numbers. You have to understand profit and loss and things that, can feel really intimidating. So creating the right team around myself to make sure that I have accountability and I am supported in the areas that I'm not as strong in. But most recently, it's been leadership, because I started as a solopreneur. And then as the vision grew and I realized I needed more help, the other thing no one really teaches you is how to lead a team, how to be a great, and not just an okay leader and get results. I want to be a great leader that is impacting my team's life just as much as the other lives that we're impacting. And that has involved a lot of personal reflection, a lot of looking at where I get in the way or where my own fears can tend to project onto my team. And it's messy. And I've had harder conversations this year than I've ever had in my life. But the team that we've created, I see the results of having those hard conversations and being willing to always take responsibility, that the leadership comes, from me leading myself first. And that's at least the current challenge of business that I'm in.
I love that. You leading yourself is what makes you then be a great leader. And in terms of what's next for Powerhouse, I know you said that you don't like to think too far out onto the horizon, but what do you see in the immediate for the community? What is it that you're building? What is it that you're excited about building right now?
Well, and I don't actually even know if I shared this with you at all. We are finally really creating the next thing that our community has been asking for, where we're teaching the art of building community and specifically building your business by cultivating this engaged community. And we're doing it as a mastermind. So we're doing a community builders mastermind early next year. And I really can't believe that we haven't done this sooner, because it is the thing that people ask us about most. And there is really a framework to it. So it's taken me a little time to almost deconstruct what I have been able to do very intuitively and turn it into something that people can follow and they can emulate, no matter what their strengths are, no matter what they're building community around. So we're very excited about that. And then after that, we're really clearing space. Our motto next year is to do less and do it better, because this second book that I briefly mentioned earlier is something that I just know is meant to have its season to really come to life. And I'm really, really excited about that.
Do you have thoughts already about what the second book is going to be?
I do. So I think I want to tell the story of what happened since that first book, was published to now, but tell it through the framework of that cute quit concept, because, it's so simple, but I still use it every single day as I'm working toward my next goal. And if we can really understand how to look at our next path of evolution through this lens of knowing what to look out for in terms of these little moments where, if we're not careful, we can logically talk ourselves out of what we really want. I believe that is the key to leveling up in any area of life that you want to produce a different result. So it's been a lot of fun just writing through some of that content and getting to share, the story that not many people got to see about the evolution of Powerhouse Women from book one until now, because there's so much behind the scenes, like we've talked about today, that people don't get to see. They see the outward, like the results of it, but not many people get to see the behind the scenes deep inner growth that I've been going through in being able to bring this vision to life. So that's at least the direction I'm starting with, and we'll see where it ends up.
Do you have a goal, a target of when you want to publish the book? By when?
So I do know that
So that we can
want
hold you to it. So you
oh, I
can't
love you
quit.
so much for this. I feel like I've told enough people at this point that there's no way I'm cute quitting on this book. I do know that I want to pursue traditional publishing with this next book. So I'm in conversations right now. It's a totally different process. The other book, I sat down, I started writing, and then I figured out the publishing process because it was a kind of a hybrid self-publish. I figured that out along the way. So this is very different. This is about, really looking at a book through the lens of what's relevant for the marketplace now. What are publishers looking for? And that's challenging me in new ways, right? Because I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I want freedom. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. So I'm just really leaning into even the discomfort that's coming along with this totally different process. I do have an outline written and all these things, and I'm talking with some agents right now. So I know I have to kind of release the timeline of it because ultimately that'll be up to the publisher. But what I'm holding myself accountable to is, okay, how am I actively through what I can control, which right now it's writing the outline, starting the proposal, setting up conversations. What is the thing I can control? And surrendering the parts that I can't for this specific journey. So, but I will welcome check-in messages from you, my beautiful friend, to keep that accountability alive.
Oh, done. I'm scheduling them right now.
She's creating an auto-populated calendar date every month. Hey, Lindsey.
Every month I'll be doing a check-in. Where's the book? Waiting for my advance copy.
Oh, you will absolutely be on that list.
Lindsey, one of the things that you talked about is the fact that you didn't come from an entrepreneurial background. You actually had a corporate career before. What was your corporate career? What did you do? And yeah, tell me about that.
So it's very, very glamorous. And I'm sure this is exactly what people would imagine my corporate career would look like. I sold carpet. I sold commercial flooring. Did you know that? I was like,
I creep you. So I know, I know, I did ask the question knowing the answer, but people who don't know.
Yeah. I know it is just such it's something that is so funny to look back and realize how perfectly aligned it actually was for my journey. Because what that taught me, that was the first really kind of big life decision where I was just truly following intuition. I loved the people that represented this company. It actually was a pretty cool job because my job was to wine and dine interior designers who were, girls about my age. I was in my 20s at that time, and try to get them to work with our products, on these huge design projects. So it was actually more fun than it sounds. And that's how I met my husband. So all meant to be, because I got a man and they moved me to Arizona where it doesn't snow. And I grew up in Wisconsin. So those two alone, totally worth it.
Totally worth it. What would you say were some of the greatest skills that you learned from that job that you now apply or have been able to apply to entrepreneurship?
I really do see how, so it was an outside sales position. So in a lot of ways, it really taught me how to set myself up for success as an entrepreneur. I know that can be really challenging if someone's used to working in more of a structured environment where someone's telling you what to do with your day. Where I had autonomy over my schedule, over my day. I worked from home. So it taught me those early fundamentals of that, combined with, honestly, it was because I was in that industry at that time that I even became an entrepreneur, because here I was in the commercial construction industry. I started my career officially in 2007. So by the time I got up and running, it was early 2008. The start of the recession was happening, and it became very clear very quickly that, this ideal of get a good job and that's your security that I'd grown up in the Midwest being modeled. I just kind of had this thought like, oh, okay, maybe that's not always the case. Maybe there are these other factors that we're heading into this kind of new normal. So what it's actually done is it's taught me not to fall into the gloom and doom when faced with a challenging situation, whether it was the pandemic or now talks of what's happening in the economy. I just automatically default to, okay, where's the opportunity? because there's always opportunity if you're looking for it. So within 2008, that recession, not only I created community. I started with some of my coworkers to bring our laid off, customers together. We did these events called networking for the not working, and everyone would bring a $5 bottle of wine, and we just were keeping connections because we knew eventually they would go back to work, and we wanted to invest in those relationships. And I've just taken that into how I build community now, is how you show up for people when they can, essentially do nothing for you. That is remembered so much more than when you're knocking on their door. Because, back in the construction world, it was, because they have this new project. And of course, everyone wants to be considered on this project. It's the same now. How are you showing up for people when you don't need anything from them, when you don't want anything from them? And that ultimately, I think, that's just the kind of person I want to be beyond business. That's just the kind of person and individual I want to be known as. And it really started in that season when it really just taught me not to be afraid of what was happening in the outside world, that there is always opportunity. And I think it starts with, how are you showing up for people in those seasons?
Now, as you said, we love this job because it taught you many skills, and it also brought the incredible Elliot into your life. One of the things that I love about the two of you is how supportive you are of each other, because I know even when we were at the event, you shared on stage how Elliot was stepping into entrepreneurship. Tell me about what that has been like for you, supporting him on a journey that you've already taken in the past of jumping from corporate into being an entrepreneur.
Oh, it's been so much fun. And I was just telling him this week, there've been some big decisions he's had to make, and he's had to sit with some, just that feeling of uncertainty and all the feelings about ourselves that can bring up. Like, can I do this? Am I really cut out for this? And what's been so cool is I know what's waiting on the other side. So it's allowed me to really almost vicariously get to live through the newness of what it feels to be really challenged. And, he has given me the greatest gift of always being that steadiness. No matter what was happening, with our finances, with the world, the steadiness just came from his belief in me. And I know how transformative that was for me. And it's the easiest gift to give back to him. And I think it's one of those things where we often underestimate just how powerful our belief in our loved ones can be. Because at this point, any of us can choose to focus on the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. And I don't believe in just pie in the sky, not being realistic about here's the real challenges. But the thing that impacted me the most, that he's always given to me, is he reflects my strengths back to me in relation to the challenge that I'm facing. So it's not being unrealistic about the challenges ahead. It's saying, yes, here's these challenges, and here's what I see in you that has you totally equipped to handle them, to face them. And it's just a really cool season for us. Like you said, a lot of change, but what else is going to force us to level up? Like putting ourselves on the line, taking big risks together with the intention, again, not back to our earlier conversations, not attached to a specific outcome, but now creating this vision of not just who we want to become individually, but who do we want to become together? How are we evolving together? And it's been such a fun ride. And he's just, I'm just noticing how much more willing he is to talk about the fears as they come up, where I think I internalized that stuff so much more. It's such a gift that he's been willing to confront those head on so much faster than I ever have. And I just watched then how much more quickly he moves through them. So I feel like I'm learning lessons and also getting to contribute at the same time, which is pretty cool.
I also think it's a testament to him feeling safe with you, feeling safe to express the fears. I think that's a wonderful thing, as you said, being there for him, and him knowing that regardless of what the outcome is, that you're there to to support him. I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, that feeling of safety, it's a fundamental human need. And even in uncertainty, we can create for ourselves and for our loved ones, we can create feelings of safety when it's not based on the outward circumstances. I do believe like that safety comes from within. And it's just been such an honor to get to give that gift back to him, because he's given it to me over the last 10 years of entrepreneurship, and it's his time to shine.
And shine he will. Shine he will. I have no doubt about that. Lindsey, I'd love to invite you to finish this sentence. I am worthy, but.
Ooh. I'm worthy, but I struggle with how my success will make other people feel.
That's a good one, right? Our fear of allowing ourselves to shine, but feeling like I can't shine too bright because how will other people feel? Why do you think that is? Why are you afraid to allow yourself to shine?
That has been one of my biggest areas for improvement work. I've had so many breakthroughs in it. And then I get to these points where I realize that there's still a version of it that's there in my awareness. And there's probably, a tie back to childhood, or a feeling of like at some point feeling just very different. And I can remember a lot of moments in grade school and just even around family of just knowing that I was different, not better, but I just was the ambitious one, So, I think it comes back to safety, that I think at some level, I'm in the work right now of teaching my nervous system, rewiring my brain to know that it is safe to be all of me. And all of me happens to be very ambitious and very driven. And I think on the outside, others have reflected back that like, oh, it just seems so effortless. You seem so relaxed as you're achieving. And I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just being me in the world. But I think that's the biggest, that's really the breakthrough that I'm working on right now is what does it look like to be fully self-expressed and keep the compassion that I think is fundamentally at the root of this fear? Because the truth is I want happiness and joy for everyone. I want success in whatever way that looks for everyone. And all I can do is be on my path. I can't control what they want or don't want. And I think it comes from that place that I just really want and believe it for everyone. And I want to keep that part, right? I want to keep the belief, but release the guilt around what it means if I achieve it faster, or if I want to go bigger, or if I'm just on this path of my own personal expansion, like we talked about. And that just happens to be right now. There's a lot of momentum. It's almost overwhelming for me how much momentum I feel there is to tap into. And it's remembering that for every one person that might be triggered by that, there are hundreds more who need to see it. They just need to see it so they know it's possible for them too. So I'm just constantly dancing between those two. And I think that's really common. And it's important for people to know that it's real. That's a real fear that shows up.
You, my friend, are truly an inspirational. You, my friend, are truly a powerhouse. I am grateful that our worlds are connected. And I am so grateful to you for the community that you have built, the women that you inspire, the women that you will inspire, because we need more you. We need more examples like you showing us that we can stand on a stage in teeny tiny little shorts and big shoulder pads and look amazing.
Everybody gets shoulder pads, right?
We all need shoulder pads in our lives. Lindsey, is there anything that you want to share with my audience before we And this beautiful I don't want this conversation to
I
end, but I
don't want
know
it
you
to
have a life.
end either. I know. I really am so grateful for our friendship. And I don't think it's by any accident that the moment we connected, before it was even in person, it was a familiarity. It was a safety. It was like a knowing that our souls are just really destined to be on this path together. You've just blessed my life in so many different ways, this conversation included. And, I feel like right now, one of the places I'm just having so much fun showing up is on the podcast. It's one of my favorite places to add value and have really honest conversations just like this one. So if you love podcasts and have some extra time in your week after you binge all of these episodes, Powerhouse Women is our podcast name, and would love to connect with everyone over there.
It is a great podcast. I've been a guest on that podcast, and I listen to it all the time. And I wish you so much continued success. So where can people find you? So we can find you on the podcast. Look for Powerhouse Women podcast. You'll see your beautiful face on the cover. Where else can people connect with you?
Yes. So on the gram, I'm sure we'll link all of those links in the show notes too under my personal page. And then Powerhouse_Women is our community page, and everything under the sun will be linked there as well. And yeah, I love to create real human connections beyond these beautiful platforms that allow us to impact people around the globe, but truly would love to hear if the conversation impacted you in some way. Would love to hear that and connect with you and get to know you too.
Lindsey, last question for you. Finish this sentence. I am.
I am love.
I feel love when I am with you. I felt loved when I did meet you for the very first time in person. And I'm setting the intention, putting it out into the universe, that in 2023, you and I will get to hang out some more.
Oh, I would love
in real life.
So much. Yes, please.
I love you. I'm grateful for you. Thank you for making time for this beautiful conversation. I literally have notes that I don't normally listen to my own podcast, but I'm like, oh, she said so many good things. I'm going to have to listen to it again. Thank you, Lindsey. I wish you so much continued success. Thank you for all that you're doing to inspire all of us. And I love you so much.
Oh, I love you. Thank you so much.